皆さんこんにちは、みーみるです。Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we are digging into Japan's 2025 Energy White Paper. It's a fascinating look at how the country is planning to power its future.
And really, it all comes down to this single massive question. For Japan, it's this constant puzzle of balancing energy security, economic reality, and of course, environmental responsibility.
And if you want one number that explains the urgency, this is it. Japan can only produce about 15% of the energy it needs. That makes it incredibly dependent on other countries, and that single fact is the engine driving this huge national shift we're about to unpack.
So, here's our game plan for today. We'll start with the challenges Japan is facing, then look at the incredible story of Fukushima's recovery. After that, we'll dive into the national strategy they call GX, check out the cool new tech making it possible, and finally, see how Japan's efforts measure up globally. First up, let's talk about the pressures that are forcing this change. And it's not just one thing. It's more like a perfect storm of factors all hitting at once.
You know, for a long time, the two big worries were unstable global politics messing with fuel supplies and, of course, the long shadow of the Fukushima disaster. But now there's a new, powerful force in the mix.
And that new force is our digital world. The explosion in AI, data centers, and semiconductor plants is creating this massive, unprecedented hunger for electricity. It's actually reversing this long-term trend where energy demand was falling. So when you're facing a storm like that, where do you even begin? Well, Japan's strategy starts in a place that's both symbolic and absolutely crucial: Fukushima. It's an amazing story of turning the site of a disaster into a launch pad for the future.
And just look at this. The visual proof of recovery is, well, it's just incredible. On the left, you've got the huge evacuation zones back in 2013. Now look at the map on the right, from today. The difference is night and day, showing how much progress has been made in making the area safe again.
But this is about so much more than just a cleanup operation. It's really a three-part mission: the careful, painstaking work of decommissioning the reactors, the massive effort to decontaminate the land, and maybe most importantly, turning the whole region into a center for innovation. And this right here is the perfect symbol of that pivot to the future. It's part of something called the Fukushima Innovation Coast Initiative. The entire area is being reborn as a hub for robotics, for drones, and for next-gen energy, all represented by this world-class green hydrogen plant.
So what's happening in Fukushima is amazing, but it's really a microcosm of a much, much bigger national plan. And that plan has a name: the Green Transformation, or GX for short.
Now, this is absolutely key. GX isn't just an environmental policy. It's a whole strategy trying to solve three huge problems at once: how to get a stable supply of energy, how to keep the economy growing, and how to become carbon neutral. It's a massive balancing act.
But one of the biggest challenges for GX is something you can see right here on these maps: geography. The new demand for power from things like data centers is all clustered around the big cities. But the best places for renewables, like huge solar farms, are often way out in more rural areas.
So, what's the fix? It's a pretty clever idea they're calling watt-bit cooperation. The basic plan is to build out the power grids, the watts, and the communication networks, the bits, together, hand in hand. That way you can make sure all that green energy gets to where it's needed most.
Okay, that's the strategy. But what technology is actually going to make all this happen? Well, the white paper really zeroes in on four key pieces of tech that are going to be the workhorses of this transformation.
First up, floating offshore wind. This just makes so much sense for Japan. As an island nation with really deep coastal waters, traditional wind turbines are tough, but these floating ones can be put way out at sea, where the wind is much stronger and way more reliable.
Next, we've got a real game changer in solar technology. These are called perovskite solar cells. The cool thing about them is they're super lightweight and flexible. For a country like Japan with lots of mountains and cities, that means you can put them almost anywhere: on walls, curved roofs, places you could never put a big, heavy solar panel. Okay, so wind and solar are great, but what happens when the wind isn't blowing or the sun isn't shining? For that, the strategy includes developing new, advanced nuclear reactors. The idea here is to create smaller, more efficient, and fundamentally safer designs to provide that steady, carbon-free power the grid needs 24/7. And the fourth piece of the puzzle is a massive bet on hydrogen and ammonia. Japan is working on building the entire system from the ground up, from making the fuel to creating special ships to transport it. The goal is to use them as clean fuel for power plants and heavy-duty transportation.
Okay, so the plan is huge. The tech is cutting edge. But how is Japan actually doing on the world stage? Let's look at the scorecard.
And look, the numbers show they're definitely making headway. Japan has already managed to cut its greenhouse gas emissions by more than 27% compared to 2013 levels. That puts it on a solid track to hit its targets for 2030 and eventually net zero by 2050.
But, and this is a big but, this chart really puts things in perspective. When you look at where Japan gets its electricity, only about 31% comes from clean, non-fossil fuel sources. Compare that to the EU or Canada, and you can see there's still a really long way to go.
And that brings us right back to the central question. Japan's green transformation is this enormous national project. It's a high-stakes bet that they can use technology to solve that impossible puzzle of energy security, economic growth, and a healthy planet. How it turns out will truly shape the country's future for generations.
このチャンネルが興味深いと思った方は、チャンネル登録といいねボタンをよろしくお願いします。